We'll move on to the first panel discussion on Abu Dhabi SME economy, the big picture, the growing contribution of SME sector to Abu Dhabi's GDP, non-oil diversifications, current SME challenges, growth limiting factors. May I request our moderator, Mr. Anoop, CEO, ED, IBMC Global Networks, to be on stage, please. And also, I would like to invite our panel speakers to be on stage. Mr. Federico Fernandez, Project Manager, GIAS, General Civil Aviation Authority, UAE. Welcome, sir. Professor Dr. George V. Anthony, Advisor Knowledge Initiatives, IBMC India, Dean and Director, FISAT India. Mr. Tirupat Mehta, Managing Director, Vice Consultancy. Mr. Raj Gopalan Ramesh, CEO, Veracity Consulting. Mr. Bhaskar Raj, Senior Journalist, UAE.
Hi, Mr. Frederick. How are you? Yeah, please. Yeah. Please. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much. Welcome all our senior panel members to IBMC's UAE India Business Fest 2019, the concluding ceremony in Abu Dhabi. We have a very prominent panel available today, and they have a lot of in-depth experience in the industries they are representing. So to give an audience an outlook about the expert areas of our key panel members, may I request our panel members to kindly give a self-introduction, so that will be better for our audience to give their comments later. Starting from Mr. Tirupat Mehta.
Good morning, everyone. Myself, Tirupat Mehta. I'm a chartered accountant, and I run a boutique advisory firm called Wise Consultancy, based out of Dubai. So we advise corporates, SMEs, large corporates, in setting up of companies, holding structures, raising finance, VAT advisory, audit, and accounting services.
Mr. Frederick.
Hello, my name is Federico Fernandez. Thank you very much for this lovely invitation. I work for General Civil Aviation Authority of United Arab Emirates. It's a federal authority, and my job, I belong to the most commercial arm of that entity. My job is to scout for projects in the aviation sector that needs financing, aviation/tourism, but mostly in aviation. And at the same time, I gather investors around a sector that is very energetic, and in the first 35 years, the next 35 years will prove themselves as added value for investors, traditional investors into aviation sector and non-traditional investors. So I scout all the world. Mainly I scout projects, government projects, infrastructures, and also startups in aviation sector. And once a year, after we have a team that scouts it all around the world. We travel a lot and also try to connect them into local investors. And once a year, we get together. This meeting will happen next week. It's called GIAS, Global Investment in Aviation Summit. You're all invited. You just need to drop me an email, find me in the social media, or speak with me now, drop me an email, so that you can have access to what's happening in terms of investment in aviation sector and tourism sector all around the world. We have around 7 ministers, we have 20 official delegations, we have 70 beautiful startups in aviation and tourism sector that will rock the next 30 years, either as IE, either infrastructure, software. So it's a lovely platform for everybody to start diversifying the look. So I'm here to speak about tourism and aviation. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Great. Mr. Rajagopal Ramesh.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Anu, for the opportunity to be in the panel. My name is Rajgopal Ramesh. I'm a chartered accountant by training. I have been in the UAE for a long time, nearly 40 years now. I was working mainly in Abu Dhabi and a little bit in Dubai for the first 35 years as an employee of various companies, including ADNOC Shipping for 15 years. And in 2014, I started on my own. I run a boutique management consulting firm called Veracity Consulting. I provide advisory services in accounting, finance, M&A transactions, also in improvement of operational controls, cost controls, and so on. Thank you.
Mr. George V. Anthony.
Good morning, everyone. I take this opportunity to thank the organizers for inviting me to this panel discussion. Myself is Dr. George Anthony. I serve as a Dean and Director of FISAT Business School from Cochin. It's a business school promoted by a federal bank, which is a private sector bank in Kerala. I also serve as the Global Ambassador for IAAP UK and the Regional Director for Institute of Directors, India. My expertise is most into corporate governance. My PhD and postdoc is into corporate governance, and I carry 22 years of exposure in the industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have a very expert panel available here, and our topic is the growing contributions of SME sector to Abu Dhabi's GDP, non-oil diversification, current SME challenges, and the growth limiting factors. And I think I'll start with Mr. Tirupat Mehta. He's an international consultant operating in multiple countries and having a very long track record in UAE. So you will be having an in-depth interaction and experience about the sector for a very long time. So based on your expertise, how you see the non-oil sector diversification is happening in UAE? Is it just a theory which is there, or it practically, are you seeing that kind of a change is happening? How important that is?
Yes, UAE is of late, have started focusing more on non-oil, industries, whether it is a tourism, whether it is hospitality, or you call it as manufacturing or converters. So if you talk about Abu Dhabi as specific, Abu Dhabi non-oil sector is growing by 6% per annum. Their contribution, SME contribution to the GDP of UAE is around 12%. And with the Expo 2020 coming in and the facilities what Abu Dhabi has created, like IZAD and other board, we see a lot of contribution by SME into the non-oil production, basically into manufacturing setup. This is what we see. And if you see overall the contribution of, there's a 95% SMEs in UAE as such of the total corporate size what you have. So it is a major 60-70% of the revenue of a non-oil comes from these SME sector. So SME plays a very vital role as far as the economy is concerned, of the UAE. And now with the global changes and the economy and the reliance on oil, going down and the volatility, the focus of the government is towards, promoting SME sector, which is the backbone of any economy. So I see a lot of positive movements where the land has been allocated at lower cost, electricity, power, utility. So adequate infrastructure has been provided so that non-oil can capture to the global market. And especially you have almost like 2 billion people within the axis of UAE, whether it is India, GCC, Africa, at a distance of 6 hours, 7 hours, 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, destination. So UAE places a very high importance as far as the global markets are concerned to have setup of SMEs or corporates over here as a manufacturing base. And we see a lot of movement into that, investments flowing into UAE.
I think Mr. Rajgopal Ramesh also can add a few points there, the kind of diversification which is happening from non-oil, oil sector to non-oil sector, the kind of changes you are seeing in UAE.
As I said in the beginning, I've been here for 40 years now almost, and I've seen the UAE grow from, I would not say an underdeveloped or undeveloped country. It was developed even in 81. It was probably a decade after oil was discovered and exploited. And ever since, I've seen it grow by leaps and bounds. But then the focus was mainly on oil and gas, the energy sector. Trade was restricted to import and export. Dubai was well known for re-export trade. But over the last 4 decades, the manufacturing sector has taken root and grown by leaps and bounds. You name any product, whether it's FMCG or consumer product or industrial inputs, everything is manufactured here, except they do not, out of choice, have avoided industries which create pollution like chemicals or textile manufacturing or leather, treatment of leather. These are highly polluting industry. They've been kept out of the ambit of UAE out of choice, not because they could not do it. UAE has made forays even into agriculture. If you go to the Al Ain area, there are lots of greenhouses, and they produce fruits and vegetables at fairly high cost compared to competition, but it proves a point. Even in terms of research, we're all aware of the deluge we had over the last couple of weeks. It's all due to natural factors as well as cloud seeding. That's a level of scientific achievement which this country has reached. So all this goes to prove that diversification is at the top of the agenda of the country's policymakers and the rulers, and it has been successful so far.
We would like to take your comment also, Mr. Frederick. You are from the aviation industry, but based on your experience, how you have seen the UAE has moved from the oil sector to non-oil sector, the changes which you have seen, your side of, because in aviation sector, you're saying that a lot of startup initiatives and a lot of other initiatives the government is coming up. So just throw some lights on what kind of change we are seeing in this particular sector.
Well, I think that I come from a country where tourism is also very important, that is Portugal, and I can see the fantastic job that has been made here. Firstly in Dubai and now in Abu Dhabi. There is exciting news coming to Abu Dhabi. Probably people are not very much aware, but this agreement with Air Arabia is just the strongest low cost in Middle East. And they own their own aircraft, their own portfolio. So a lot of this investment capability, and putting that together with lovely new airport and the structures that already exist here in hospitality. Let's say, for example, Yas Island and all the major events and all this shifting of focus also to tourism. That means that the next years will be very, very exciting here in Abu Dhabi, and all the industry around tourism will profit from that. It's very easy to understand that from a point of view if you know the stakeholders that are involved. So, and also UAE presents to these visitors the best weather possible, the best customer experience possible. I mean, just traveling to UAE airport is, for people who travel a lot, it's amazing. And the connectivity that exists in both airports.
The advertise that itself is a destination. So
yes, everything. And for example, in Dubai, something that is quite amazing for an European. In Dubai, only 20% of people exit the airport to Dubai. So there is a mine of gold there still to be worked. It's amazing. You don't see these kind of numbers in other countries. So the work is done. The strategic was very well placed. And I mean, it dazzles everybody that it's not from this country. How was it possible, the vision? And it's here. The tools are here. And I truly believe, I'm optimistic, and I also love tourism and aviation. So I truly believe that the sector that will influence most in this country will be always tourism and aviation. So if it wasn't for a strong hub, so most of the business will not be happening, and most of the tourists will not be coming. So SMEs should focus also in some products that can be related to aviation sector. The other day, I heard an amazing story in the airport in Dubai, where gentlemen that were working on the ground near the aircrafts, pushing those yellow sleeves, big yellow sleeves that they connect under the aircraft, that is AC. So, and every time that sleeves were damaged, they were replaced for a new one. And the gentleman said, is it possible to repair this? And they said, no, this is a certification or legislation. But he went knocking in several doors and he said, okay, there is a breach. Perhaps I could be the first one to do this in UAE. And now he's got a millionaire business running in Sharjah, just doing repairs for that. And now he's shifting all this technology, and there's knowledge to everywhere. So tourism and aviation is definitely a way to go for SMEs in Abu Dhabi.
Great. Dr. George Anthony, you are a person who is looking not only UAE, like the global perspective, like how the economic changes is happening. This is a global phenomenon, from oil sector to non-oil sector. Diversification is a global phenomenon. Even in India, the changes are happening in a massive way. Government is also giving a lot of focus to SMA sector. We have the Ministry of MSME, and a lot of initiatives has been taken there. And there is a very good relation which is coming with India and UAE. So how do you see the future possibilities of SME?
Well, basically, if you look at SME has always been a major contributor to the economy of any country, for that matter, whether it's India, UAE, or any other country, for that matter. And in a recent research paper, which I've observed, that 70% of the jobs are created through SME organizations. And the other day, I was going through a document, a government official document of UAE, and I understand that 40% of the jobs are created in SME sector in Dubai, which is contributing to 33% of the GDP, which is in line with what is happening around the world. If you look at the emerging economies, it's and if you look at the job opportunities created by the SME sector, it's around 45%, and it contributes around 33%. SME contributes around 33% to the GDP. Now, in India, we face an interesting aspect now. It's called stagflation, which is a situation where you have high inflation, low growth rate, coupled with low employability. Now, this is happening for the last, if you look at the past 6 consecutive quarters, this is happening. Now, the aspect which we have to look at is, how is it affecting companies? When you compare with the big size companies and also the SMEs, the positive aspect of it is the opportunities are common for both. The opportunities which you find, the IoT or the artificial intelligence technology related enabled aspects are, it is common for both. But at the same time, if you look at the challenges, I feel that SME companies face a lot of challenges than the big size companies in terms of asset utilization, or in terms of technology adoption, or in terms of funding, for that matter, which is one of the major issues. Now, this is actually a situation that SMEs, or probably when you mean organizations like IBMC should look into. Now, I come from an academic background. If you look at the other panelists, you are mostly into industry. I come from an academic background as well. So now, I feel that the academic institutions a greater role play in this kind of a scenario. Like, the basic fundamentals of organization excellence, if you look at, the 3 major pillars are knowledge, skill, and professionalism. Now, if you look at the knowledge perspective, yesterday's knowledge is, in fact, is at times irrelevant in today's context. Today, if a company want to be into existence, if a company need to look at sustainability, definitely they need to work on fintech or on artificial intelligence. They need to adopt such technologies. Now, the most interesting aspects of about skilling is a particular skill in today's environment is a totally different concept. Skill has only shelf life in today's environment. A particular skill is valid today or relevant today, but probably you need to develop a couple of, certain other skills, if you want to operate in, tomorrow's environment. So, and another major aspect that, SME companies should definitely look at is a behavioral aspect. Now, when I use this particular terminology, behavior aspect, the knowledge that we gain, or these organizations gain from, and as well as the skills that you adopt, need to be aligned in such a way that the organizational behavior, should really help the organization in getting aligned to the the industrial requirements, in getting themselves transformed to the requirements of the customers, and understanding the customers, the true stakeholders of the organization. So from this perspective, I strongly believe that organizations need to focus on these aspects, if they are looking at future.
That's very well pointing out the challenges which SMEs are facing. And in fact, here in UAE, what we see is that the right aspect of the change is visible in front, because the government is also coming up with a lot of policy changes that is in the front. And industry itself is changing, like a lot of innovative technology innovations and other things are coming up. So in this aspect, in the practical scenario, when you directly interact with the SME company, I think Mr. Tirupat Mehta can add a lot of information here, because when the companies are facing these challenges, as you mentioned that funding is a problem, SME companies are facing the funding issues. Even the starting itself, the regulatory changes and other things, they need to keep updated, like what are the changes coming in and all these things are there. There the problem is that there is a little bit reluctancy in adapting these changes, it's there. And if you look at the kind of new implementation which has come in UAE, for example, VAT implementation. The moment the VAT implementation has come, majority of the clients were saying that it is something just to penalize them. That was the attitude for them. But the companies were not realizing that the government is bringing in certain regulations so that the company's growth can be sustained for long term, because everything is in a regulated platform, it is coming globally. The regulated platform, it is coming in. I think, Mr. Tirupat Mehta, if you can add a little more value, the kind of challenges the SME companies were facing from the practical experience. Say, for example, the changes of financing itself. Because many of the SME companies, it is being started by the particular expert in that he will be a business expert in his line of business, but he may not be a financial expert. So how important is it to get a proper financial advisory in terms of an SME company for a sustainable future development?
As there are a lot of challenges, and as rightly highlighted by our fellow panelists, is that the skill sets. See, most of the SMEs are single owner driven, 2 employees, 3 employees. The average size of SME, by and large, if you talk about UAE, is 3 or 4 employees, if you take an average of it. So the right skill set is not there to take to the next level. And the corporate governance, the kind of educate report, risk mitigation factors, which are challenging in the current changing atmosphere. The global markets are so volatile that SMEs are facing these kind of challenges because they don't have adequate manpower or the knowledge. And that's one of the reasons the banks are now reluctant to fund SMEs, because they see that there's a risk. To a level they can assess, but the moment they go global, there's a challenge, whether they will be able to, how they will mitigate the risk of the customers at the other side or the supply chain. So these are the challenges which SMEs are facing. But of late, what you have seen in the last 3-4 years, there are a lot of skip cases in UAE. That has also put a lot of strain on the banking side of it. The trust factor between the SME and the bank has gone to the lowest level, if you see in terms of history. The compliances, the KYC, the global banking scenario, the reporting system, the CVR, the FACTA, all these changes are putting more strain onto the SME funding. So if you see, the banks are reluctant, very reluctant to fund third port shipments. Unless until it is a UAE base or your movements of goods are from UAE, they are not willing to fund. Which again, as UAE has been a trading hub, so it's been a transit point. So you will have goods moving from India, China, or to Africa, or from west to east. So this is what the movement is. So banks have to assess themselves. They have to also understand the psychology of the SME, the trade patterns of the SME, and the devise adequate system, so where they can also give them a helping hand in assessing these situations and fund them. Without the banking support or the industry, no SME can sustain. You see the challenge in India also with the corporate world is that the banks are not funding. There's a stop on the fund. So there is a rotation. The working capital gap has become bigger in terms of, so the scales have gone down. The global economy, India is struggling to cope at 7-8% of growth, what they have projected, if they have to become a 5 trillion economy. Similarly with the UAE, if you see, the statistics shows again that there is a drop in UAE population by 25% from 4 million to 3 million. Now, with that kind of challenge coming in, that means a lot of SMEs must have been closed. If there's a 1 million people have gone from the country, that means the tourism, the hospitality, the SME sector would have taken a hit, maybe because of the markets are not there for them, or there's no financing available for them. So these are the challenges which the SMEs are facing currently in UAE. Banks are trying to do it. The financial institution, the government is also promoting and bringing up, insurance-backed programs, funding. There's a fund which has been adequately given by the Abu Dhabi government and Dubai as well to support the SME manufacturing or SME industry. But again, the SMEs are not aware of that. They have to be educated. They need to take advice from, financial experts, the consultants who can help them, guide them, understand, and make the other institution understand what's their business model, so that it will become easier for them to raise finance and do business with safety. That is the most important part.
There we have seen a very interesting development. The majority of the SME companies right now, over the last, after the implementation of VAT, rather than they depend on the traditional style of accounting practices, like putting the accountant and doing their own these things, they are now depending on the professional bodies, like assigning the task of financial part to be taken by the experts, so that these things can be taken care by the professional team. So they don't have to take care of this aspect, and they can focus really on their business model. The other side, what we see is that the people still follow these traditional models and other things. What they do is that at the time of VAT filing and other things, they somehow file the returns. But they do not understand the importance of having a proper accounting system. So for example, tomorrow you are applying for a loan, whether it is from the bank, whether it is from the crowdfunding or anything, your proper audit report and all these things in a systematic manner, it is very important. So how far the SME in a mass scale, if you look at how far they are educated, because there are a lot of SME education which is going on the VAT training sessions and other things. Rather than training on the particular aspect of how to file the VAT return, how far we are able to reach to the SME and educate them that this is really important for you to go further in future. So the importance that a proper accounting system is needed, you need to have the proper audit to be done, quarterly audits, and these are all things which is needed for your company. It is not some obligation you have to file it for the government. Government has brought in for your benefit. How far this message has reached to these companies right now?
If you see, historically, UAE as such has no taxes, right? So the corporate world or the SME world were like, okay, go happy guys, in terms of do your business, whatever bank balance is your balance, in terms of that kind of approach. They were not statutory were complying with any requirement. So suddenly a change. First was to educate themselves, to upgrade themselves, to see that they have to comply with these things. So 2018, government started 17 promoting that the VAT is coming in, they have to comply with these other requirements. So it took a lot of time for the SMEs to, shift from, that kind of attitude towards that now they are compulsory have to maintain books of accounts. So that has been done. A lot of seminars by the government has been conducted to educate the SMEs that every Emirates has gone and, done the seminars that how they have to maintain books. Institute has done a lot of work. IBMC has done a lot of, type of work to educate the SME industries that this is the compliance. And it's a collection point. Basically, it's a collection point of tax by the government, appointed the company, the responsibility has been shared. But to translate into the financial aspect of it, I don't think so. Hardly 1 or 2% would have thought about it, because again, we don't have a ecosystem, financial ecosystem, which will help them in raising finance if I'm an audit compliant, except for the banking. You don't have SME listing like what you have in India, BSE. So we need to have another ecosystem over here where these kind of compliances, when SME does, they can go and capitalize on it. Currently, they are only doing it from the perspective of the statutory obligations which has been imposed on them. So this is where the SMEs are driving. But yes, in near term, they will find the benefit out of it because the lending will become easier. The trust between the bank and the SME will be there because these are reported sales. These are authentic sales which are there. The transactions are authenticated. The adequate tax has been paid. So the benefit will come, but again, the financial ecosystem has to be developed, which again, UAE has to come up with, how to have the risk of SMEs shifted and how they can, the private participation of others into the SME to take them to the next level of, is required. So I see will still take time, 1 year, 2 year down the line.
Going on. Mr. Rajagopal, Ramesh, like how far now the companies are going for the specialized services, as we mentioned, like the exclusive CFO services and other things, rather than they put in their own organization external outsourcing of the expertise of people having a lot of experience, like that, how you see that the change which is coming in UAE right now?
I think there is still a long way to go to achieve efficiencies associated with interesting jobs to experts through probably outsourcing of functions. By its very definition, SMEs are generally small in size. And one of the most important ingredients in a company coming up is the owner's passion. By and large, the owner is a technocrat. He's probably an engineer who has an idea and who feels confident that he can execute it. And generally, they do. But along with this, by virtue of being small and knowing the business inside out, the owner generally has a good amount of control over what's happening in the business. This gives rise to a kind of a psychological barrier in delegating, number one, or outsourcing functions. Take, for example, a very small manufacturing company employing 50 people, a couple of products. The owner exactly knows what is the day's production, what's the level of raw materials, what's the inventory of finished stock, what's the receivable. Because it's a small business, he's involved hands-on all day. So that gives a kind of proprietary ownership in his mind, and therefore he does not want to allow outsiders to enter the business. The accounting and finance function is privy to what's happening at the company A to Z. So they don't feel comfortable with letting outsiders enter the business and have access to this kind of information. And also by virtue of being small, generally, if you take the accounting and admin function, for example, in a small and medium enterprise, the accountant tends to perform functions which are not exactly accounting. Other functions are also done, by which the company achieves some cost savings. Therefore, they do not see any merit in outsourcing these functions. That leads me to believe.
That actually brings the question of being transparent and the secrecy and transparency aspect.
Yeah,
the business owner wish to keep their secrecy, and the transparency part is a little bit compromised there.
This is basically a mental block, I would say, to put it very crudely. And through education, probably we can overcome.
But going forward, when it becomes mandatory to furnish your proper business records in public, say, for example, when you are giving the actual financial details to the government, of course, it is a transparent information. If there is nothing to hide, then going forward, this kind of mental block also will be changing.
I don't think that situation will come to at least UAE for a long time. This is a country which believes in giving freedom to the businessmen. They do not like to impose regulations, restrictions, reporting. As far as possible, they would like to minimize that. Having said that, by virtue of VAT being introduced since the last 2 years, this third year running, here companies are forced to use outside help in having advice, at least for filing purposes. So this is a good beginning, and give it some time to settle down, and as businesses scale up, they will go to outside market to engage experts.
Okay. Now, Mr. Frederick, coming to the aviation industry, you were mentioning in the initial this thing itself, like there are a lot of startup initiatives that the government has taken. In fact, SMEs, it is very important for the upcoming new generation. A lot of startup initiative is happening in different industries in UAE, and the government is taking a lot of initiative. In aviation industry, what are the core these things the government is bringing in? What are the things, if you can give a little more insight, will be
All startups are SMEs, and they all suffer from the same pain.
So aviation industry is not for the big giants, so there is a
No,
big room for
no,
SMEs.
yes,
Yeah.
there is.
That's
there
a good
is.
news.
There is. I don't know the percentage, but I would rather say that it's more than half of it.
Okay.
It will be SMEs. SMEs owners or startups are entrepreneurs. And look at this gentleman here, almost 40 years working he started his own company 4 years ago. So entrepreneurship is on the blood of every SMEs. And I characterize startups, the initial SMEs that are scouting for money. And everybody's looking for money. So the problem is that probably most of SMEs that they have added value are looking for money on the wrong place. And we need to think differently. There is a lot of equity, especially in the UAE, going around. There's a lot of equity in countries that are the most populated expats here, for example, India. SMEs will need to start to work with their accountants, very important, to understand where they are. And if they have an added value, the bank will not care. So bank is doing their business very well. So you will go there and say, I just discovered the next big thing. They don't care. They care about their protection because they're doing their business, right? But you can share that risk with an investor, right? You can make a spin-off out of your SME, for example. Let's say that I have an SME that does some good things for tires of aircrafts and cars. But me and my team, we discover a new way of being more cost effective. I go to the bank, and what the bank will say? Well, according to your data, your income is just this one. How can you ask me for 2 million dirhams for research and development? It's impossible. So we must think out of the box and think, okay, so I will brand it. I will call this Tire X. I will push it a little bit apart from my company, Mainflow. I will go outside and see if there is an investor who wants to share the risk with me. And of course, I need to give equity for the investor to feel comfortable as a collateral, but this is what startups do. And startups do seed investment, and most of the most successful startups, they're already SMEs. We call it acceleration funds. So there is a lot of companies here that are looking here and all over the world, they scout all over the world, looking for companies that have already their normal business and they have a good product and they need to accelerate it. So they will gladly come and push some money in with virtually no guarantees, just equity, and then accelerate your business. So there is a lot of opportunities if we think out of the box and if we just don't knock the door of all the same guys because they're also doing their business.
And currently we are seeing the UAE government is opening, the visa rules and regulations, and we are seeing a lot of changes in the tourism industry, as we are mentioning. So naturally the traffic flow and other things will be increasing in a big level, and even on arrival visa and 5 years visa and other things, a lot of things are coming in. And given the opportunity which the Expo 2020 is opening up, and along with these changes, the momentum will be continuing in the future. So how do you see the possibilities of tourism industry growing in this particular region?
I see changes happening very fast and very smart. And it makes us believe that there is no stopping, right? So there were lessons learned in the past with the crisis, and things are now much more action-driven. So that means that there is cutting fat when there needs to cut fat. There is investing where it needs to be invested. There is a call to reality, and there is also a call to the ambition. So, and while the players at the market play this kind of rules, the government is also leading them and predicting, as you said on your beginning, the vision for 2070. So I truly believe that the future, I'm always optimistic, but I do believe that the future is amazing here because we can see the private sector moving around, we can see the government moving around also with the vision, and we can see that we have already the structure. So tourism-wise, it will grow. I'm sure it will grow until Expo 2020. It will be challenging after it, not for the tourism sector, because I can speak by my own experience. My country did an Expo that was very much successful, real estate also. And then Portugal was more known, and people returned. So I think that one of the goals of Expo 2020 is also to open this awareness of the Arabic treasures that exists here, and these people that are very much motivated to receive all people from around the world. So, and that will be capitalized in more return. Other sectors, like real estate, I don't know. But tourism, I do believe that Expo will have a positive effect in returning people, returning capital.
Great. The other sectors, of course, Dr. George V. Anthony from the education sector. So how do you see the possibilities of education sector in the going forward? Because a lot of startups are coming in, especially from your own place itself, like Byju's Hub kind of things has gone to multi-billion-dollar business and other. In the education sector, a lot of vast changes we are seeing right now. So what is your outlook on this sector, how the SME future opportunities are coming up here? Because augmented reality, all these things, and future, in a couple of our presentations, we heard that even the classroom concept itself will be changing in. There is no need of universities. People will be having the real-time learning possibilities there. So how do you see the changes coming in here in this sector?
It's an interesting question, all. In fact, now I would like to discuss this particular issue with a short story which I read in one of my travel. On a wedding eve, a husband asked his wife, "What gift should I give you tomorrow?" So she said, "I would like to have a ring, which you have in your finger." And this gentleman was into marketing. He was a marketing specialist. So he really wanted to delight his wife. So before going to office on the next day, he went to the kitchen. She was preparing a cup of tea for him. He asked, "Darling, should I give you a ring from my landline number or from my mobile? Should I give you a ring from my landline number or from my mobile?" You know what would have happened. This is actual situation, Here, if you ask me, this gentleman made 2 crimes. He could not understand the mindset of his wife. This is what happens in most of the situations. Even, if you look at SME, it's not an exception. Some of these organizations who really fail to understand the, customers. And even they don't understand the environmental requirements. In fact, you're mentioning about the compliance-related aspects. So many organizations, in fact, they don't understand the environment. Because in this short story which I said, the gentleman was, identifying that particular word with something else which is totally irrelevant in the context. So the text and context has a relevance. Now, coming back to the main question which you asked, there are a lot of companies coming in. There are a lot of, business schools or even other colleges coming, a lot of application coming in. A lot of initiatives are taking place in the education sector in India. In fact, I myself closely interact with some of the SMEs and startups. And there are a lot of projects, being discussed even. I would, in fact, put it differently. See, value can be valued only if value is understood in the right perspective. Value can be valued only if value is understood in the right perspective. So if I don't understand the value of my customer, if I don't understand the value of compliance to the requirements, if I don't understand the environment in the right perspective, then, it is actually difficult. In fact, I would suggest 4 different aspects that, the SMEs should definitely, or any organization should definitely look into. The first thing is the direction clear? Do I have a clear direction? Whether all my energies are directed to the direction in an ethical manner. Is there any scope for improvement in my strategic plan? And am I implementing my strategic plan in the right possible way? And at the end, I would say, your value is the sum of your values. So if I understand my customer in the right perspective, if I can understand the environment, if I can transform myself to the requirements of the environment, if I can align myself to the requirements of the environment, definitely there is scope for, SMEs. And there are excellent opportunity available in today's business environment, when you compare to yesteryears.
That's a very relevant point, because when we discuss with the SME companies, some of the companies, they ask this question like, Expo 2020 is coming, and then what is after that? There is this big question many of the people used to ask. But the thing is that the government has already put the plans, like as I was mentioning in the initial introduction, Vision 2021 is there, Vision 2030 is there. The government has planned up to 2071. So without seeing these things, as you mentioned in the story, without seeing the real picture, they're still asking what is after 2020? So there is a segment of people who are still not educated or not even aware that what is actually the government has planned. And the government's plan is already put in in paper, like in front of you, the Abu Dhabi Vision 2030, if you go like the key sectors, what all activities the government is planning to do, all these things are well in front of you, the way in which the government is modeling, what are the technology development which is coming in, what are the ways in which the company has to change. And there it is very important that the customer's behavior, consumer behavior. Earlier, we used to go to the supermarkets and other things we used to buy. Right now, everything is online. It is very convenient. The convenience buying, it's happening. So it's very important to understand the perspective of the customers as well. But looking at the global scenario, the education industry in specific, there are a lot of startups coming in there. How do you see the UAE's opportunity there? Because UAE government, Abu Dhabi has started a new university for artificial intelligence, Said University for Artificial Intelligence has been started. And a lot of innovative studies has been coming in. Now, even for the SME companies, if they want to upgrade their knowledge, they'll be looking like not in the academic perspective, in the real business perspective itself. If you think that a lot of changes in technology, or even compliance, even the things are coming in, how it is like, is there such kind of a proper result-oriented course programs or something is available right now? There is much more programs are needed from the government side, because entrepreneurs development programs itself, how it is possible and whether it is still available or much more developments are needed in that particular sector.
No, if you look at, the training, I was mentioning in the first part of the discussion, skill is something, which is very, very relative. It is very much aligned to the environment. Because if you ask me, like in the early 2000, we were talking about Y2K issues, Y2K problem. Many opportunities were created. And now, people, focus more on AI, machine learning, IoT, Industry 4.0 in particular. So I would suggest that, in fact, if you look at, there are a lot of opportunities available in the environment. For example, Harvard University for that matter, if you look at the portal of the Harvard University, they are very much eager to support institutions or bodies, for helping them to support, in empowering the youth or the needy in terms of knowledge. So there are a lot of opportunities available. The government here, it takes, in UAE, it takes a lot of initiatives. So I strongly feel it's all about identifying the requirements. Like, we need to be proactive, need to understand, what exactly, we need. It's, there's something called the power of, the power of understanding, or the, at times, the power of ignorance is also helpful. Because many organizations, I've seen in India, I'm basically an SAP consultant. I was consultant to companies in India. And certain organizations, when we have the initial discussion, they that, this particular organization has gone for it, and we also would like to go for it. They don't understand that the environment there and the environment here is totally different, because work culture is different, the customer, pattern of customers is different. So a lot of differences are there. So my point is, it's all about understanding the requirements. See, if I'm into a particular industry and this is what I require, then I should focus on that and then go ahead, rather than, shifting. I need to look at my competency and the opportunities which are there in the environment, before I look into, creating opportunities in getting more business or, generating business. Now, to conclude, I would say that, there are a lot of opportunities in Dubai, because this is my third visit to UAE. And every time when I come, I find a lot of changes, a lot of positive changes happening. And government is very, very supportive. And therefore, I feel that, it's up to the, the SMEs to come forward, then have quality interactions, and probably organizations like IBMC can play a great role, in empowering and enriching, enriching the SME sector in UAE.
In fact, having too many opportunities, that is a valid point. Say, for example, somebody is coming to UAE to set up the business. We have a lot of resources available. Starting from there itself, the opportunities are, a lot of things are there. But does it create a confusion also? I think Mr. Tripat Mehta can add value there, because when somebody comes, immediately the people will be looking at the low-cost operation, how fast we can set up. But rather than that, aligning to their business model to take it to the next level, which one is more relevant, Like that, is there a serious inquiry coming in there, or people are looking for ease of doing in case of cost effectiveness and other things? How do you feel, and what kind of a support we can extend to this kind of new entrant? Because with the Expo 2020, a lot of business new companies will be coming in here. What is your advice to those companies? Because in UAE, on all the 7 Emirates, we have the free zones available. Each free zones have its own characteristics, and a lot of additional benefits are there. Say, for example, manufacturing companies, certain Emirates will be highly beneficial. Service companies, the other things will be. What will be your advice to those companies who is coming to UAE? What kind of an approach they have to take, those who are starting fresh in this particular market?
Anybody who want to come into any new country and want to invest, they need to critically evaluate. They have to do their financial modeling, the business planning, the market survey, and then they should start, not on the hearsay basis. If you see in UAE, we're talking about education, you see how many schools have been opened without realizing that every year on year there's a drop in the population. Now you see many schools getting closed or don't have adequate number of students into it. Right? Similarly, there are a lot of colleges which has happened, which has been opening. So again, because this school is doing very well, I should also enter into education. These hospitals are doing well, I should also go into the hospital. So that kind of herd mentality will always have a disruption into that kind of industry. You'll have overcapacity built. So anybody who wants to come into the country, want to evaluate, and he find that this business is in line with what he is doing, what are the pros and cons. So they need to take financial help from the consultants to evaluate, do their projections, see how the country is shaping into that particular model, into that industry, into hospitality. You will see a sudden spike into hospitality industry in 2020 and 21, if you see. And everybody is saying what happens after 21. So if you have to serve 20 million people, as a tourist coming in, you may need 2 million cars or 200,000 cars. But what will happen to those cars? Argument's sake, as if I do as an investor, okay, everything will be fine, let me have into a fleet. But then what happens next? So everybody has to evaluate whether they can sustain that kind of model, that kind of spike, and whether there's a public-private participation into it. So all those kind of modeling and risk assessment need to be done prior to setting up the unit. So, and the consultants will play a very vital role. The market analyst will play a vital role in seeing how the economy is shaping up, how the global markets are shaping up, and then make a call into your, enter a venture into that particular business, into the country. So I see a lot of SMEs, they don't do that because it's a gut feeling, and because my neighbor has done or my friend has done, so I should also do it. True. Or he is successful, so I also should start like that. So that kind of mentality is hurting more in the industry. If you see, a lot of businesses are doing fantastically well, even in the downtrend. Why? Because their model is based on what they are doing. They understand the market need, they understand the price point, they understand what is the need, and then they establish the business. If you open a very high-end school and you open a very mid-range school, where is your strata in the pyramid? So which pyramid strata you are going to serve, that is important. So all those things are very important when you evaluate and start a business. So we strongly recommend when people come to us, we give them evaluations of different free zones, non-free zone entities, whether Abu Dhabi, what is their business? Where is the close proximity of the market, of the raw material or of the sales side? That need to be evaluated. What cost, whether there's a capital participation, whether there will be funding available. And if you have to scale up your business to the next level, now, what is your capital infusion, from where you will get it? See, on the new venture capitalist or those kind of scenarios, the startups, they only look at how much they can scale up. But 90% of the SMEs, they cannot scale up. And their model is they start the business and then they struggle to scale up. And if you see new ventures which are coming up, they show the scale-up proposition and then they ask for the money in advance.
Okay.
There's a two-way, the side which happens. And they're able to read because somebody will say, I can scale this model up, so I can invest now. Person who's running the business is not able to raise finance. But person who is well advanced, well prepared, well documented in terms of visit theory, he's able to raise fund as an alternate funding which is available. So again, it's how the business man will look at setting up his structure. The consultants will play a role, and they need to take advice, proper advice, and evaluate critically before they start up. So the failures will be lesser. You know that in Dubai, 80% of the restaurant closed within 1 year. There are 1,000 restaurants opening every month and closing every month. There are 10,000 restaurants itself in Dubai. So why this is there? Because every restaurant is not successful, every restaurant is not failure, but still there are 10,000 which are running, but it's changing hands. So like that, they have to evaluate. So I would say that is very critical.
Based on your experience interacting with all the different, because you're interacting with all the free zones in UAE, how far you see it as a very friendly atmosphere, or it is difficult for a new entrant to start the business? How do you see the overall experience with interacting with the free zone authorities and in UAE?
In UAE, you interact with any government organization, it is very, very helpful in terms of, the only problem is the people who want to go, they don't know which is the right free zone for them or right atmosphere where they should set up. The problem, because it's a one-window shopping, correct? So you go as a one-window, any free zone, your license, your visa, your everything is taken care by the government. But if you don't know whether you should go to Ras Al Khaimah or Al Quwain or Abu Dhabi, then it is not the problem of the free zone. Then they blame the free zone, or they blame that Emirate that this is not the right, oh, this is not there, because it's not cost effective from them. Somebody who wants to be close proximity to the airport, then they have to be close proximity to the airport. They cannot go to Ras Al Khaimah and then do the aviation business from Ras Al Khaimah and then you have a port over here. So selection of the right free zone, the right market, again, it will evaluate. They need to evaluate based on that, which is giving them the best benefit out of it. So similarly, IZAD offers a lot of benefit, special dedicated center, because you're in a hydrocarbon space. If you're going downstream, you want to set up, the converters. This can be a very good place, the IZAD or the, you see Jebel Ali developing too fast, because right people, right logistic, the connectivity, those companies have benefited and grown multifold than the other Emirates. So interaction, all free zones, I think, are very, very professional. And all economic chambers, Chamber of Commerce, you go to any economic license, they are very helpful. What you'll ask them, they will give you the right answer. The decision making is at the other end. They cannot take the decision on behalf of the investor. So investor has to evaluate well and then select the right, free zone or the Emirate, I would say.
I think,
If I may add something to
yeah.
answer your question as to what are the changes that we're seeing in the UAE in the academic area. Over the past few months, I had the opportunity to interact with a person who has been a traditional, academician in the traditional sense. He was vice chancellor of such a traditional historic university like Aligarh Muslim University. He and a group of people, like-minded persons from the US, are in the process of setting up an university in Ajman, where more than half the focus is on the non-traditional streams. They will have science, commerce, humanities streams, but that would probably only be 30% of the story. The remaining 70% would be directed towards things like artificial intelligence, blockchain, teaching these knowledge areas. That's the focus. They've been looking for funding, and till a few months ago, unfortunately, they were not successful, although they are selling what is the flavor of the month or flavor of the year, I would say. Initially, their plans were to buy land and build a purpose-built building, which would have taken them 3 or 4 years. And then, on second thought, they realized they can't wait so long. They need to get started quickly, like yesterday. And therefore, they were fortunate enough to come across a building which would suit their requirements in the short run for the first couple of years. What happened lately, I have no idea, but this is how it's going. The winds are sweeping this country also. The academic investments are taking a different direction in what is required today, in today's weather. And from another angle, if you look at IBMC itself, you're the investment manager for Samana Global Fund. And if I'm not wrong, one of the 7 verticals they would be investing in is education, right?
Yeah.
So probably as an investment manager could recommend starting these courses here, maybe at an SME level. You don't need a university straight away. And if it succeeds, it can always scale up. What do you think?
In fact, we have a plan which is announced in our program in Armani in Dubai. When Bombay Stock Exchange CEO, AC Institute CEO, Mr. Ambrish Datta was there, an SME empowerment program, which has already been in the list, and Bombay Stock Exchange is supporting to set up the programs here. That is specifically for the SME sector, a program is coming in. So with the support of BSE, that is already in the pipeline. So that initiative is already there. And the other challenge, which is already mentioned, like the funding part, the SME economy platform, which we are launching even today, that is there, that aspect is also coming in. And the challenges can be addressed with a collective effort, because expertise is needed from different, as Mr. Mehtaji was mentioning. Like at the time of starting the business itself, you need a proper consultancy. It doesn't matter you are spending a little bit money on the consultancy part, it saves a lot for you. But that is a part which many people think that it is an additional expenditure. But that's not an expenditure, it's actually part of your investment. That has to be taken from that level itself.
I think there is a gap in the market in this area. These being kind of unique courses, AI, blockchain, and so on, the only players are these premium universities like Amity or SP Jain or the IEMs of the world. These tend to be very pricey and out of the reach of the middle range of people. That's a gap in the market which probably Samana should address, at least in the UAE market. See, the estimates for Expo 2020 are that there will be 25 million visitors. Let's say it's over-optimistic. Even if it's only 60% of that happens, a good 15 million people will come. And assuming 5% choose to stay over, out of 15 million, I think 100% will fall in love with this country, it being what it is. But let's say 10% or even 5% decide to stay on, that's a good 750,000 people who would make UAE their home, permanent home. Then there is a huge scope, isn't it? And Expo is hardly 9 months away.
Yeah, of course, because, and I don't think it is, the estimates are, every time when UAE is putting some estimate, they're overachieving it. Even the WAT estimates and other things we have seen, how many folds they have overachieved the same thing. So definitely there is a lot of scopes coming in there. And I would like to take some comments from Mr. Frederick as well, like the aviation industry's perspective. What are the government initiatives the government has taken, like to support? Because it's they are planning to make it a global hub. To that objective, what are the initiatives the government has taken? What are the opportunities available for the global investors in this sector?
Well, for the point of logistics, I believe that the challenge is already addressed. So we will have, I think, the longest highway free zone on the world between Al Maktoum Airport and Jebel Ali Harbor. That's quite very good news. I think also that in logistic-wise, we all see that the parcel business is growing out of scale. So cargo is back to be a good thing in the aviation sector. It started to be on the beginning, then stopped, and now its cargo is getting to be big. 5 years ago, you will wait 4 days for your package. Now, I will not use more this provider because it took me 3 days to come back. So things are changing very fast in terms of parcels and logistics. So cargo will increase into aviation sector, and you will see more often aircraft transporting, air shipping more cargo. So this market will also be very hectic here in the Middle East because people are they have more power to buy, and they are impatient. So they need quality, right? So you buy something in Amazon, you don't care if it is in New Zealand or in Chile. You need to have it in less than 24 hours. There's no place for ships on that. So aircrafts will be carrying more and more cargo, also more and more goods. And Africa is around the corner, right? And Africa normally tends to do all their business here in UAE. Specifically, for example, last year I saw a gentleman buying a cargo company in Chade for $10 million in our platform, but he pushed it here. So the headquarters is in UAE. Sharjah Airport is very dynamic in cargo, and they are preparing themselves to this. And we are seeing now these gentlemen on the bikes, on the cars, delivering things, but in the future it will be drones that will be delivering this kind of packages, so that the price can go down and the people can have more access to parcels more quickly. So into aviation, I can see that things are growing. Aviation sector has been, I believe, one of the few sectors that have been constantly growing on the last 15 years, and they will continue to grow. People want to travel more, and parcels want to travel more also, together with food, for example, and all the other goods. All the rest will come by ship, but I would say that this connection between India and also China China is very close, but we are seeing more opening through Hong Kong. Hong Kong is, I think, the third destination in the world with more cargo. And the airport is like crazy, it's super congested right now. So cargo will fly a lot to UAE, and then it will fly then to, I don't see any hub in Africa with capability to do what UAE is doing. I don't see any hub in the Middle East with capacity to do what UAE is doing. I don't see any hub with capacity like Hong Kong to grow, to have the conditions that UAE have. So UAE in the center is in the center of everything.
So looking at the future growth perspective, you see that the adequate infrastructure has already been created in UAE, or still under progress?
Definitely has been created. I mean, Al Maktoum Airport is also a huge project that very wisely is being taken care of in a very strategic way. So instead of putting in off right front, I think that the measures that are delaying some of the phases of the project are very smart because things are going very well elsewhere. So we know that I mean, not we, and I'm not speaking for the government, but personally, all consultants here know that there will be, in some sectors, are mature, right? So it will be mature after Expo 2020, so there will be probably some relaxation in terms of growth. So that means that strategic is working, vision is working already. So this will not be primary, this will be, let's shift it for a secondary plan and make what we have to work best. And because we also have to deal with competition,
True.
right? Competition is working very fast. I mean, there is hubs in the world that are working, investing and trying to get the most out of it. But UAE, with the infrastructure that it has already, with the people working, with the plans that they have in events, it's more than enough. If they need to power up, fuel up, they will do it.
So your advice is to focus the new development which is coming in, especially in Al Maktoum Airport, and the related the development which is coming in UAE has to be a key focus for the investors who are looking for the opportunities in UAE.
Definitely. If I was an investor, I will definitely look at the sectors that will be able to grow, emerging sectors that will be able to grow, always backed up with intelligence and knowledge that what's going on. If we have 25 more million people coming like in 2020, more than we have enough, so there will be an excess of customers, clients, users. So let's have a look at it. I mean, for example, startups, and you were just saying this a few time ago, startups, when they meet investors, and I'm in between those meetings a lot of times, they will ask you, so what will you do that others will not?
Yeah.
I have a question for Mr. Fernandez.
Yeah.
About a year and a half ago, it's not working again? About a year and a half ago, we read in the media that Jebel Ali Port has plans to use the concept of Hyperloop to transport cargo, even containers. And after that, we heard nothing about it. Do you have any updated information on that?
Officially, no, because I didn't know the subject. I think I can answer that question by a user perspective and aviation almost expert, because I will never be an expert in aviation, is that those kind of disruptive projects will never start by going big. They will always start by small steps. So one person, two persons, I mean, how is a body of a people will act when on a tube like that, going 1,000 kilometers an hour? So the idea is amazing. So make business go faster, but they will start slowly with people, and then they will go to cargo. I'll give you an example: drones. There's an unimaginable amount of money going into drones. $300 billion is already invested in original equipment manufacturers. We call it OEMs. So investors are pushing this money into aircrafts that fly with people inside. But still, the technology is there, but they are not still flying for several reasons. Drones, they are now shifting for big cargo drones. Again, there is a difficulty, people, legislation. So we don't want to see drones flowing in our heads with 500 kilos cargo. And somebody has to manage it. So the platform, the drones are ready, the cargo is there, the demand is there, people are asking to have the goods early, but still, the drones are not flying over our heads, and this will take time for us as civil aviation authorities on the world to adopt rules, air traffic management, so it will be hell on earth, a lot of drones, so create corridors. So all this is being discussed by ICAO, by all the entities that will certify that, and loop will be the same thing. And how much will it add to the value of the cost doing it by Hyperloop, right? I mean, it's cost, somebody needs to pay it. So this has to be assessed, and definitely it will be, cargo will be the future for a clear answer for investors. The future is cargo will fly faster because we want to. We don't want to wait more than 24 hours for cargo, whatever she is.
Okay, great. Now I think we are in the concluding stage of this particular first session, and I would like to take the summary comments from Mr. Tirupat Mehta. Like, what is your final message to the SME economy in UAE? Like, what is your, as an expert, Wise Consultancy, you know that you are operating in different segments and a lot of experience you are having. So what's your message to the SME sector in UAE?
For us, I think UAE is one of the most promising business places to set up your business. For various reasons, infrastructure-wise, they are best placed, as Mr. Frederick also said, that aviation, close proximity, connectivity, cargo movement, port movements, port calls, service, incubators, you name it, education, hospitality, hospitals, whether it's a healthcare, whether it is education. The government has very focused vision on each sector, and especially which attracts a lot of, African market, because they are not well geared for these kind of stuff. So you have a very close proximity, as well as you have 190 nationalities living over here. So language is not a problem. Infrastructure-wise, you don't have a problem. You have a connectivity which is 6, 7, 8 hours. You are across almost, you can cover 2/3 of the globe. So that makes the most, interesting place to set up your business. Laws are changing, more prone towards investor-friendly, rather than we have seen that we are not a civil law country, but then again, the investor laws have been protected, DIFC laws, ADGM, all those guys are changing with the world changing, what the investors need. So there's a lot of protection for the investors. Infrastructure-wise, we are well placed. Only thing what needed is SMEs to evaluate their own business model, in the right way and establish. They will not fail in this country as long as their models are right, because what a business needs is available. Only thing is, certain things which government need to look at it is the closer markets where the cost of labor, if the industry they are focusing, then they have to be competitive. So they need to give more easy platform for those kind of manufacturing setups and that kind of stuff, which can set up their business over here and be cost effective, vis-a-vis to labor or power. These are the two challenging factors in any manufacturing industry, Tourism is already contributing more than 35% to the GDP. And it will further add to it the way the new developments and new things are coming. So I think that sector is already, well geared, and they are further progressing into it, with drones coming and flying on your head, and you have air taxis and that kind of stuff. So it will be a very, good city to be there, after Orlando, if you see. So, and again, as a tourism, what else you need? You have rain, you have now hailstorms, and you have snow. So that's been 3 added to the culture, in terms of UAE, and you have flooding. So you have all the best of the climate, again, for the tourism, what is required. So I think UAE is well poised to become a major business hub or the financial hub of the Middle East and the Southeast Asia after London, or if you see Singapore and then the UAE, if you see from that angle. So I don't see a challenge. Small challenges will always be there in any economy, anywhere you go. But the beauty is the government is very proactive in their approach. The moment they find these things are lacking or investors needing, they're very quick to change. And the adaptability to the needs of the investor, which is the key strength of their success. What success you see today, what you see Dubai or UAE as such on the global map, is because of that. And why we are behind India or other places, because there's a policy paralysis. One government wants to do it, but the other doesn't want to do it. So this is how we are struggling to, make one flyover for 10 years or 20 years. And here you see overnight, 2 years, there are 50 flyovers which has come up. By the time you go to the road, oh, there's a new bridge you are flying across. So I think, to me, SME has a very bright future in UAE. The business modeling has to be done right, and they can capitalize on it. This is what I can say.
Yeah, Mr. Fred, your concluding note. Yeah.
Well, simple advice for SMEs, be creative, think out of the box, try to get, if you see yourself into that cycle that for you to grow, you need to ask money for the bank, rethink. Meet gentlemen that can show you some lights, and then be creative with your team, create added value, and search for equity elsewhere.
Great. Mr. Ramesh?
To my mind, there are no two views about it. The future is bright for the UAE. The UAE is, the people living here are so happy to have a very benevolent government, well-meaning. They not only think, they act too. The federal government, and especially the Dubai government, is a government of action. And I think the future is bright. Optimism is the key.
Okay, great. Doctor?
Yeah, I would suggest 3 aspects. Number 1, be passionate about what exactly you're doing, your business, because you need to be very passionate about what exactly you want to do and you're doing. And the second aspect I would like to suggest is, like, be a good listener to your customers and be empathetic, because this is something empathetic to the needs of the environment, because this is something very, very critical, when you're into business. And the third aspect is you need to be very much professional and disciplined in the approach, and do give importance to compliance, because these are 3 aspects which I strongly feel that, which will take an organization to the next level.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, with that note, we take the first session we are concluding, because UAE, as the hub of nearly 200 plus nationalities, it actually offers a lot of opportunities. You are actually not targeting the customer base not only from UAE, there is a global customer base waiting you. And as the visionary leadership of this country, they have set the plans even up to 2071. So the companies, they have to look forward in tune with the visions of the rulers of UAE. And of course, there are challenges in this country, but those challenges are, as we see in our panel members during the discussion we're mentioning, that can be converted as opportunities. And with a massive development coming in terms of Expo 2020 and related new changes which is coming in this country, there's a lot of opportunities coming in this country. And the SME sector will be having a very high growth rate in this country. So with that particular note, we conclude the first session right now, and we'll be moving on with the next one. So we thank each of our panel members very much. So Mr. Tirupat Mehta, Mr. Frederick, Mr. Ramesh, and Dr. George. So thank you very much for joining us today, and we will take the discussions forward. And the expertise of these gentlemen will be available not only today, even in future as well, it will be available. In case if you have any direct questions or any support needed from their expert areas, please don't hesitate to contact us. You can contact IBMC. We'll be readily connecting with them, because they are in a position to support you in their respective field of business in many ways. So Vice Consultancy having a lot of supportive activities in setting up the business here in terms of their research analysis and all these things. And Mr. Rajgopal Ramesh is also an expert in those areas. And Mr. Frederick is an expert in the aviation industry. Dr. George V. Anthony is also in the education sector, is a well-renowned figure in the world. So in future as well, if you want any kind of support with any of our expert panel members, please don't hesitate to contact us.